Today I will discuss the brain science behind anxious attachment styles. Our understanding of this science is continuously evolving, so as we learn more, our theories might change, evolve, or deepen. You already know the key signs of anxious attachment and how they can cause distress. If you haven't already, please watch my video on anxious attachments demystified, where I discuss the key signs that cause distress, like fear of abandonment, constant need for validation, and difficulty trusting. According to John Bowlby, attachment is about safety, protection, and emotional regulation, particularly in times of perceived threat. Children develop attachments with their main caregivers, typically their parents, to ensure safety, healthy development, and survival. Our experiences in those early relationships map onto the neural circuits and how they connect to each other in our brains as implicit memory outside of awareness. These patterns of attachment become the templates that we use to relate to others in all our relationships. As an example, have you noted that your patterns of emotions and behaviors remain pretty much similar in relationships until you consciously change them? Similarly, individuals who have experienced repeated trauma like abusive relationships often ask, "I'm not sure why I find the same kind of partners." So what are these neural or brain circuits? Did you know there are about 80 to 100 billion neurons or nerve cells in the brain? Chemicals or neurotransmitters pass messages between the neurons. Each neuron is connected to thousands of other neurons, and this is how the brain circuits are formed. Any triggers cause the neurons in our brains to release chemicals, and a brain cell can fire from 10 to 100 times a second. Repeated triggers or experiences cause neurons to fire repeatedly, strengthening the neural connections or networks, forming patterns of thoughts, emotions, and behavior. These networks tend to develop and mature in childhood. Our brain is inherently social, despite the genetic or nature element where we inherit certain characteristics. Our interactions influence how these neural circuits develop and mature. So now you can see how individuals with insecure attachments may find themselves feeling insecure and clingy in romantic relationships, as these patterns are mapped into the brain circuits. We understand the brain as having two hemispheres, the right and the left. The right hemisphere of the brain processes non-verbal and emotional information. It grows rapidly in early childhood, coinciding with the mapping of attachment patterns. The left hemisphere is responsible for logical and language processing and becomes dominant later in childhood. The right hemisphere is connected more to the emotional center of the brain. Emotional center is the limbic system, more than the left, and has a slight negative bias towards anxiety, shame, depression, and withdrawal, which can impact our experiences of attachment because it develops first and is therefore the center of our self-identity. A middle structure called the corpus callosum integrates the relationship between the right and the left hemispheres. Because a child's main interaction is with their main caregivers, usually their parents, their emotional availability and how they respond are the main factors in this development. When a child is insecure about the reliability of the parent for safety or protection, they are not easily soothed. They feel ambivalent. They become clingy, possessive, sometimes even angry. They focus on others, not on the self. Insecurely anxious children can become insecure, anxious adults. They have abandonment fears. There is chronic vigilance about attachment separation. There is emotional dysregulation and anxiety, and they look for coping mechanisms that may cause harm, and they place themselves in vulnerable situations. I will now tell you about four structural parts of the brain. The first is the emotional center or the limbic system of the brain, particularly a structure called the amygdala that sits within it, which evaluates our experiences in relationships for safety or danger. It is the first responder of any situation. Our fight, flight, or freeze response through perception of threat is one such function. Please watch my video on how the brain and body copes with anxiety to understand this more. The amygdala also assesses our experiences in relationships for safety or danger, for pain or pleasure, and then transmits information that decides whether we seek or avoid similar experiences in the future. As an example, if someone has hurt us in a relationship, The antenna of the amygdala will then look for red signs to avoid getting hurt again. The amygdala stores this information out of consciousness called implicit memory and acts very quickly based on what is stored in implicit memory rather than real-time experience. These patterns stabilize through our early interactions and become our templates of interactions in the future. So, the amygdala alerts us to dangers as it is programmed for survival. My partner hasn't texted me in 2 hours. Is he pulling away? Now, this is mapped in neural networks and implicit memory, and the amygdala is responding. It is fear that causes this attachment behavior. The second structure is a C-shaped or a seahorse-shaped area in the brain or in the limbic system, and the third structure is the prefrontal cortex or the front of the brain. They are both responsible for explicit memory and reasoning. They evaluate and rationalize the first responses of the amygdala. Early attachments also affect the development of the front of the brain. Empathy, being seen and understood, brings emotional regulation by soothing the amygdala. Early attachments also influence release of a hormone called oxytocin, which promotes feelings of safety and emotional regulation. Oxytocin can smooth the amygdala and stimulates growth in brain regions in the third part, which is the front, or the prefrontal cortex, responsible for emotional regulation. Sometimes even a visual image of a loved one can release oxytocin. Why does a child's gaze follow their mom? They feel safe. Why does thinking of a pleasant, loving experience with a loved one calm our stress? It releases oxytocin. And the fourth part is another small structure called insula, which is placed deep in our brain. It connects the physical sensations to our awareness and sends information through the emotional centers that we just discussed. It allows us to empathize, feeling others' pain. So the circuits in the parent's brain attune to their child. Siegel proposed resonance in these circuits of the brain, meaning the brain structures work together to process interpersonal attunement and empathy. This firing of neurons in specific brain areas also stimulates growth and function of the prefrontal cortex, which is the front, which helps regulate the body, emotions, extinguishes fear, and enhances self-awareness. The sympathetic nervous system is the name given to the nerve networks that deal with fight, flight, or freeze reaction. You already know the structures involved now, right? The first responder is the amygdala. It works on implicit memory outside consciousness, and the assessors are the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. When we feel safe in a relationship, our sympathetic nervous system is not aroused. In insecure, anxious attachment, the sympathetic nervous system is overstimulated by the first responder and underregulated by the hippocampus and the front of the brain or the prefrontal cortex. The person can feel flooded by stress, fear of abandonment, panic. They are unable to self-regulate enough to calm the amygdala. There is energy for fight. People engage through anger, aggression, or they can even withdraw, freeze, or become numb or dissociate. But the good news is that we can change patterns of behaviors. How we harness this biological science to develop better coping mechanisms if we have an anxious attachment style, we will discuss in the next video. If you have enjoyed today's video, please subscribe to my channel. This will allow me further opportunities to make more creative videos. Please like it, share it, tell it. Tell it to all the people you know. Thank you for watching.